the lenses of those that are intending to actually step up in elective positions of power. Also, we want to look to navigating principles for non-partisan elections as we are journeying towards 2026. The general election is before us. However, the nitty-gritties, the signatories and the agreements that we are partisan to, what are the terms and conditions we ought to be observing through this period so as to be graded as those that are doing right, not only by Ugandans, but also by global observations and standardizations. And so genuine elections are usually the people's expression of sovereignty without a doubt. Every time you go to the polls, you participate, you cast your vote, you are genuinely expressing your sovereignty as an individual, also as a country. And globally, the right is also protected. For example, in Article 25 of the ICCPR and Article 21 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, these guarantee every citizen the right to vote and be elected through free, fair, periodic and genuine elections. Later on, we'll have a better understanding of what a genuine election should look like through the lenses of election observers on the table with me this morning. So the questions for us as a country are still unanswered. Question number one, do our elections actually meet the international standards? But of course, we'll have to have a background of what are the international standards that we ascribe to when it comes to elections. Then two, what does non-partisanship actually mean in the context of Uganda's democracy? And what was its original intent? And what is the assessment and the evaluation of where it is today and now through this 2026 cycle? And of course, with a youth forming the biggest voting bloc in 2026, how is the landscape shifting through their voices, their participation, and of course their leadership? So this morning we're unpacking these issues, and allow me to introduce to you my panel that is doing the unpacking with us. To my immediate right, left, I do have Dr. Sarah Bireete, who is an election observer, but also executive director for CCJ. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla and viewers and fellow panelists. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Then next to her, we do have two women that are in the race. And so far, they will be giving us the experiences of what are the realities on ground. But I'll start with Gloria Nawanyaga. Nawanyaga. You know, it sounds like it's a Western name, but I recently learned it's actually
even
a
last time you
name.
told me I'm a proud Muganda lady.
A proud Muganda lady. Gloria, candidate youth MP Central Region. How are you?
Very fine, thank you.
What's the journey looked like so far?
A bit challenging because our elections are actually very commercialized and very monetarized. So that means if you don't have money, if you're from a humble background, it's very, very challenging.
Okay, humble background. We also do have Kent, who has been with us here previously, and she's also a candidate Kampala Woman Member of Parliament. Good morning to you, and what is the rest looking like for you right now?
Good morning. I would say it's okay because the challenges that are before me, I anticipated them and I planned for them beforehand. So yeah, at the moment, I'm not complaining. I'm actually enjoying the ride. And I intend to enjoy the ride to the very end.
I hope you've not taken any loans.
Not yet. No. I don't even intend to.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And we do have the gentleman on the table to balance our board this morning, Joseph Ochieno. Thank you so much for joining us, political analyst. Good morning.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and especially that I will be the minority, so the suppressed, and so therefore the younger member of the parliament, meaning that I've been outgunned. I'm absolutely delighted to be amongst fantastic women, but of course being the oldest young voter of the time, pleasure to be here.
Okay, all right. So how many voting cycles have you been part of?
Since 1980, I was 18.
Wow. That's the reaction that I had. Oh, wow. So we'll start with you, Joseph, to just give us a broader picture from 1980 to 2026 general elections. What have been the hits and the misses, briefly?
I think I'll take it really from the perspective of the youth parliamentary candidate perspective. In 1980, there were very few women parliamentary candidates. But in 1980, the candidates were predominantly young people in their 20s and 30s, lest people forget. But also in 1980, there would not have been really any issues as being suggested by the young parliamentary candidate about resources. In 1980, it would have been substantially about issues, and that's why I know the reasons why sometimes I bore you guys when I come into media houses, and then when I talk issues, people say it's the past. I'm delighted that the three women panelists will push to focus on the issues that affect predominantly women and predominantly young people. And if you pick issues that affect women and you pick issues that affect young people, and then you link that to issues that affect young women, then you'd have really focused on the broader issues that affect national electorate. And so for us men should really by and large be the standards. If you look at the fact that when I first voted, I joined a political party on the basis of issues as presented, I was delighted to be faced by candidate Museveni at the time, candidate Semugero, and candidate Robote. Not only did I choose a particular candidate Robote, but I chose him primarily on the basis of issues. And then fast forward, elections of 1980, disputed globally, but predominantly here in Uganda by the people who are in charge of elections today. They've never proven that, but the disputes were but part of the process that we're going to be discussing today, so I'm very delighted to have that. But from my perspective, that was the fairest elections I have ever witnessed. Ironically, when parties were banned and we ended up with 10 years of drought, the 1996 elections found me as a young person, but in exile. That, it would appear, although new polling stations were started in Kampala within days, I thought the business of polling stations opening afresh leading to elections were gone. I thought the role of the army would be gone. It would appear that, and I think Sarah and I were having a conversation elsewhere, and you can't believe that part of the argument was that perhaps the 1996 elections were far better than the elections we're having today, and yet at the time parties were still banned. Move from 1996 to the margins of Kizza Besigye 2001, and look at 2006, and look at 2011, and look at 2016, and look at 2021, crudely, it would appear the process gets harder, more violent, less issues, and today, 2026, we thought the last time or so the last but one time you hosted me here, I was delighted that you and I helped to bring the perspective that we pushed for normalcy and pushed for peace, a peaceful election process, and so therefore we hoped there would be issues, particularly with the beginning of parliamentary elections. But today we are now talking about not only brutality by the security agencies, but brutality including that of the army. And so in context, we are in a far worse situation. The only good thing is, in my opinion, is that we have more women candidates. And yes, we generally have also relatively more younger people in the processes, but the whole thing has been substantially monetized and massively, crudely weaponized by the state agencies and state securities, which is very sad. Okay.
All right. Dr. Sarah Bireete, you are a global observer of elections. You've been able to observe different elections in different countries and continents. It begs the question first to help us draw for us the landscape of commitment that we have as a country to the global treaties, agreements, and declarations that do exist right now that should act as a protection mechanisms for us as a country through democracy and electoral cycles.
Yeah, thank you so much. At the global level, you have the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights that govern the civil and political rights of citizens globally, and the freedom to participate in elections, the right to have free and fair campaigns, you know, unbiased media coverage, and the rest of the components. At the African level, you have the African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Good Governance, the ACDEC. That charter details all the components of elections, including voter education, which is mandatory in that charter, accreditation of observers, dispute resolution, and the neutrality and impartiality of officers presiding over elections. And in this case, the Electoral Commission, the police, if the army is to come in. I also want to underscore the fact that in all elections I have observed globally, you don't see the sight of the army, except in Uganda.
Yeah.
So the army basically has no role in elections. Their role remains protecting the territorial integrity of the country and the life and property of citizens. They have no business in elections, but in our case, they take central stage, which is deliberate to vulgarize our elections, because some of them are largely partisan, and some of them have, you know, a mentality as if they own Uganda. So when you go from that, we have the constitution as Uganda, which is very clear in Article 1 and the other articles that concern elections, that Ugandans only exercise their franchise as citizens in credible, free and fair elections. That's Article 1 on sovereignty of the people. So when you fail to have an environment that would enable Ugandans to choose their leaders in regular, credible, free and fair elections, you are usurping the Constitution. So then when it comes to the character of elections, the first issue is voter and civic education. This is the first election where there is no meaningful voter education since the enactment of the 1995 Constitution. And this was deliberate by Electoral Commission. If their claim was that they don't have funds, because it's the duty, among the functions of Electoral Commission, it's to design and implement voter education programs.
And among the responsibilities of the government is to ensure Electoral Commission delivers on its mandate.
Yes. But also, apart from their mandate, they are supposed to work with stakeholders. Electoral Commission deliberately refused to accredit credible institutions to do voter education. This is their failure, fair and square, and it's deliberate. When it comes to the other exercises, it's a voter registration and update, which should be credible, which should involve people with a lot of voter education. When the Electoral Commission went in the field to update the voter register, they are on record having said that only 700,000 people turned up. Yet you have an estimate of 5 million new voters in the country going by the census report of 2024. You open polls and you have only 700 because there is no information, there is no sensitization, but also the trust levels, the confidence and trust levels within this institution. The other element is stakeholder involvement in the demarcation of polling stations in all exercises. Electoral Commission is creating 15,000 new polling stations according to a supplementary budget. Which stakeholder is involved? Are the political parties involved? Are the observers, those they've accredited, are they involved? Are the citizens involved? Who are they demarcating these polling stations with? When it comes to procurement, tendering, procurement of electoral materials, these processes are supposed to be observed by all political parties involved in the campaign. Which political party has observed the procurement of biometric machines? Which political party has observed the tendering process of printing ballot papers? Which political party is involved in supervising the printing of these materials? Nobody. Have we seen any adverts asking people to, to compete in the tendering of electoral materials? Zero. So how is the Electoral Commission choosing its suppliers? Because rigging an election is not just rigging on voting day. You can rig through these fake procurement processes. So when it comes to freedom of movement, association, media, freedom to campaign, freedom to impart information, and freedom for citizens to listen to candidates and make an informed choice as to who they should vote for. Look at how they are treating National Unity Platform as terrorists. Look at the spectacle of the military in Guru. In Kampala yesterday, Mbuya, tear gas everywhere. Eregu, army blocking roads, public roads, so that the candidate should not campaign.
All right, that being said, Dr. Sarah, you have given us the backbone of how engaging observation of elections should be from different stakeholders' lenses. Allow me to engage with the candidates that are on ground. Gloria, the young people are marking up the largest voting bloc as we are heading into 2026. What are some of those unique election-related rights that are being challenged when it comes to young people's engagement in this electoral cycle?
Okay, thank you so much. As a young person who is part of the elections, I believe elections should be free and fair. However,
when you say free and fair, what does that look like for you?
What it looks like, I will not differ so much from what Madam Sarah has said. It starts with civic education. Do young people know actually the importance of election? Do they know how they're supposed to vote and what are the polling stations that they're supposed to go to? Are they even registered? It is so sad that during my elections, as I was, I introduced myself earlier before this show, and I told the listeners that I'm a youth chairperson for my village. But it happened that some of the young people who are actually in the race with me were not even in the register. And they did not know that they were not in the register. So what does that mean? It means that some young people are even ignorant. They think maybe they are voters, but when they're not actually voters. And to me, for an election to be fair, free and fair, it starts with educating young people. Do they know their right to voting? Do they know how they're supposed to be voting? Do they even know the importance of voting? When it also comes to the issue of trust, just like Madam Sarah has said, most young people actually say that I will not be part of the election. Why? It's because they've lost trust. We have been born in this era and regime where we have only seen one president, that even if people vote and expect for change,
the young person believes it's not going to change.
Yes, thank you. The young person believes that nothing is going to change. You still have the same president. So young people have also lost trust in the election. You get, when it comes to the right to look for votes, and it is so sad that the people who are supposed to be actually protecting the young people to go out there and campaign for their candidates are the ones violating and not protecting them, violating their rights and not protecting them. And we are seeing this, with all these human rights violations that are happening, not only to the national platform, but also other, other candidates still are complaining because of what is, really happening. So how do you expect a free and fair election when the young people cannot even express themselves to the person they really want to vote, they really believe in? So to me, I feel like we might not have really a free and fair election, and young people, it is so sad that we as young people, first of all, there has not been enough civic education. There is no, a right, we're not enjoying our right to, being protected when we are supporting our candidates. And it's so sad that even young people, some of the young people lost trust in the election.
Wow. All right. Kent, you are new on the block as a candidate, and you come in, first of all, the position that you have come in has been highly contested year in electoral cycle, in and out. And there's always the challenge of the new person on the block and then a young new person on the block. How have you navigated changing the perspectives of the mindsets that you've been engaging with and interacting with through your campaign trail so far?
Thank you for that. Perhaps maybe to correct the statement earlier on, I'm not new on the block. I campaigned in 2020 during COVID, the same position, Woman MP Kampala. And maybe what I can say is what has spoiled our politics is the narrative that has over time been created in Uganda. We have, in my perspective, I call it cheap politics. And the young generation, or let me say, the Ugandans have lost hope of change. I perceive that's one of the reasons why, like my sister said, most of them don't even participate in the voting. Yeah, so it's a bit funny because an example, I'll give an example of Kampala. Kampala has a population of over 3 million voters, if I may say. And being the capital city, it has so many engagements in the course of the day. You realize that the day has more citizens who are actually not voters of Kampala, but the surrounding districts. And it's really tricky to target the actual voters, especially during working hours. And yet our campaigns end at 5. Usually at 5 is when you will target the voters at their residences or in their designated areas. However, that aside, I perceive what has spoiled the politics today would not be necessarily the strategies we may use in campaigns, but the narrative that has over a long time been created. And this narrative is not educative. It does not promote constructive politics. In other words, it's like it was created for purposes of benefiting a few because they know how to manipulate the system and walk around about it. So in my view, I am a straight-on person. I call a spade and a spoon a spoon. So there are many voters who may not want to hear that per se, but I will not please their ear today because tomorrow awaits, and we are looking forward to a better Uganda. So for us to look for a better Uganda, I perceive there are particular identities that have to come up and face the situation as it is and actually enlighten our voters of exactly what is before us and why over a very long period of time we've ended up with the same politics and the same results over the years. As long as the mindset is still the same and the way of approaching elections is still the same, we end up taking into parliament actually legislatures that are not helping us as a nation. So in my way, in my perspective, what I've done is, first and foremost, every time I meet the youth, the young generation, I keep showing them the Uganda that we want. And I keep asking them, what kind of Uganda do you want? And how do you perceive it will be brought forward? So many a times, especially the things that I deal with, the issues that I address, I keep asking, what do you want? What do you want to see? And how do you expect a change if you keep doing that? You cannot do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So in my view, we need to change the civic education before us, and we need the young generation to actually be informed of what exactly is before us, the plate that we are feeding on. For as long as we are still feeding on the same food, we cannot expect different results. So in my view, politicians of today, if we want to get better results, we are going to have to face it and deal with it as it is. However, there are two ways you can look at it. Let me give an example. Some contestants will want to choose to flow with the tide as it has been. But you may choose not to flow with the tide and face reality for what it is. So me, in my approach to campaigns, I'm facing reality for what it is. And I'm giving my voters my way of approach to campaigns and the way of approach if I get into parliament. How different would I do it? Being opposition, it's interesting that our systems don't actually favor opposition more than they favor those in power, though the beauty with Kampala is it is more opposition than it is NRM. So for some reason, for one reason or another, still there are open hearts who are willing to listen.
Okay. Kent, allow me to follow up. You have talked about there's manipulations to the system. Which one are those that you have actually seen as manipulations to the system?
Okay. May God show me which dimension to approach this question. However, if you look at Kampala, let me give an example of Kampala. Most people believe for anyone to support they support numbers, because they know that it's only through numbers that anyone can be pushed to parliament. And you notice that numbers come through political parties, especially in Kampala. It's the hitting political party that will actually get the numbers. And it's because these political parties are backed up by the presidents. So let me give an example. In Kampala, you find that very many voters end up supporting NUP candidates even when they actually do not qualify to get into parliament, or they do not qualify to sort the issues that Kampala has. So the narrative of numbers and political parties being the solution is in itself is an error. I perceive we should come to a level whereby we look at the potentiality of a candidate to present actually what we want as a result. Okay. Yep. All right, Joseph.
Civic education having been alluded to as one of the continuous growing gaps in our electoral cycle. If the Electoral Commission is not funded enough to carry out its mandate to civically educate Ugandans, and at the same time they are not cooperative with the other stakeholders, the CSOs that could have done that job on their behalf comfortably, then what is left of us in uptaking civic education as an important complementary to the electoral cycle? And also, what are then the other avenues we can tap into in order to address that gap?
Yeah, just a disclaimer, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission is a fantastic guy. He's a judge, actually, Simon, very articulate, and normally expresses himself. He assured this nation just a few months ago that the commission was fully funded. So the question of funding by the Electoral Commission and for the Electoral Commission shouldn't arise. In any case, actually, part of the conversation that I expect from the candidates is to critique, particularly as the younger voters, including... You
say fully funded, but in other reports when we have been asking them about civic education, they will always be telling us we don't have enough funding for that. So...
No, let them explain that.
They told the meeting actually on elections that on 3rd July that their budget was fully funded. Themselves.
Then thereafter we've had the PRO of the Electoral Commission here on the conversation.
The chairperson is a senior person, and that's why I said not only is he senior, he's somebody who's a fantastic guy and is a judge. So we expect to take his words very seriously. So as Sarah said in July, he told the country, he told the world that they're fully funded, and so they would not, the issue of money should not arise. So in terms of the obligations, they have no excuse. Worse, as I said, only last week we got this shock of supplementary budget, burdening the younger voters and the younger leaders of tomorrow in terms of date. And part of that money is going to the Electoral Commission. I wonder, between July and today, early December, where did this whole come from? And was it necessary? Sarah was detailed because in part to my introduction, I was deliberately leaving it because she's the expert in terms of these ones, where you then go ahead and say, look, part of this is the equipment, part of this is voter education, a part of this is a facilitation process, the other is training for our staff. So these are obvious commonsensical issues. And I took 1980 as the beginning because the saddest basis on which this regime used to come to power, to brutally come to power, was an alleged election rigging in 1980. As I said, I was a young voter at the time. To contextualize this in terms of youth and the question that you raise, primarily we would be looking at a question of voter apathy, one, and then two, as I said, civic education. I was substantially motivated in 1980, in part because we had just had an Amin war, and I was looking forward to a democracy. By and large, these spaces were there. You could say granted in areas where there were still states of insecurity. But the Electoral Commission of the time did its job. The current Electoral Commission, having gone through the process, given the mandate, given a high-level position within, as part of the law in the constitutional manner, it should be doing a lot better. My concern, though, is that the voter apathy that particularly my two colleague candidates here are raising, a culture that has been embedded over the last 40 years. For me, then, as a student, we would compete in debating. We would compete on issues. I was driven by the crudeness of apartheid. I was motivated by the question of what was happening in Southern Africa. I was, anxious to see that we did not want to see an Amin regime again. And the more we had that, we had the spaces in universities and colleges and schools where we would debate, and we had the National Students' Union that created spaces of this nature, but at universities and colleges, and students debated. I don't know when the last we had at my Temple University, Makerere University, a discussion on democracy, a discussion on youth involvement, a discussion on youth, or in any case, a discussion on an election. I don't know whether it happened. I don't know whether it's possible. Yesterday, on my way from another end of Kampala, I saw these motoring, very ugly-looking vehicles around Naguru and Bukoto, and I was wondering, is Kampala in a state of war? But these were vehicles for militarization of the electoral process. The last time I was at my city square, meaning my Freedom Square in Makerere, there is this big police thing, and I say, is this a temple of academia, or is this a headquarters for some kind of paramilitary organization? Mm-hmm. So those really are the issues. So the National Students' Union should be the temple which should train our young voters and indeed our young leaders. There's the current student organization, they moved it from a students' union, basically to take away the word, to students' association. What does the national equivalent of students' association do today? In my time, there was the National Union of Youth Organization, NUYO, effectively not only engaging young people both in institutions and in communities, but creating natural civic awareness, in which case, if then that operated, possibly the Electoral Commission's work would be supplementary and complementary. I don't know when the last time I was in Nagongera and I heard that there was a conversation about young people in the community centers. In any case, the community centers, which were built then by governments of the time, have been now dilapidated, and some of the land has now been sold. So this space is by and large terrible, and that's why I think it's much more urgent today that the Electoral Commission should really have been doing its job in terms of making sure that we create youth awareness. But that said also, political parties and organizations, political parties have a job here. I don't know how much of them are doing. Of course, they would say that, well, they're limited by resources. But a political party worthy of a name, should be able to engage its own membership and particularly focus on youth development and make sure that the young emergent leaders are conscious in terms of their roles and responsibilities and duties. Those by and large, I'm not talking about the season of election, because season of election, a political party would require Bwana Jesus to come and intervene before they are allowed to assemble somewhere in some city hall or county hall around Kampala. I think it's generally by and large terrible. Where we're coming as a country, this is not the conversation we should be having. But in any case, actually, young people of this country need to take up the job upon themselves that whatever the environment, they constructively engage, whether through political parties, civil society organizations. I don't know in terms of Sarah's organization. Sarah's organization does a fantastic job, particularly engaging with students in universities particularly, and also encouraging students to engage in national politics, including debating. The more some of these things happen, the more young people are able to focus on the real issues that affect them quickly. You were a fantastic host of a fantastic presidential debate the other time. I was privileged to have been in the audience. Priscilla, you did a fantastic job. And that said, as I said, amongst the candidates, I've been generally very critical that as the young voter of December the 10th, by the way, it's tomorrow, the 45th anniversary when I first voted in my life, the question of youth unemployment, I have said that the candidates ought to have addressed it slightly more and better.
Okay.
Youth unemployment in this country, youth education, youth emancipation, youth skilling, together with everything else, including youth livelihoods, where we have a parliamentary candidate for Kampala. And so young people don't only need jobs, young people need cheap, low-cost, competitive urban housing. Young people need access, but young people also need to have guaranteed to access to security. And indeed, young people want to be able to go to political rallies. When young people go to political rallies, they should not be attending a political rally because that is the political party of their choice. They should be going to listen to a candidate, and that candidate may or may not necessarily persuade them. We need to create a culture in which if there is a rally taking place in Nachivubo Stadium, all of us go, all young people go down there, including my fantastic young, very, very sharp daughter with a questioning mind, to be able to go ahead and say, what does candidate XY provide? Maybe they might move from one political party to another.
Allow me to have Dr. Sarah finish your statement. Dr. Sarah, the young people, there were quite a number of activations, sensitization programs that came onto the scene before COVID-19 that were trying to engage the young people and advocating for them to come to the forefront of their civic rights. And they have done so. They listened and they have come out in numbers. While you are unable to help them with the civic education, of course, through you know, your entities, while the Electoral Commission is also falling short on that hand, at the end of the day, young people have a tendency of saying, so-and-so didn't do their job, she didn't do her job, he didn't do her job, therefore, I'm not going to do my job. Or therefore, I am not going to respond, or therefore I'm not going to participate. What is the role of the young people in shaping the democracy that we want to see for the future of our country?
You know, first of all, in our case, and in most of African countries...
Actually, role and responsibility.
Yes, young people control the demographics. If politics is indeed a game of numbers, then young people now control the politics. Young people in Uganda are not all laid back. They are active, and if you see how the government is treating them, I think, and before I come to their responsibilities, I think the government is reading from the Tanzania script, especially the army. If you look at intensified violence against young people, because largely the people moving with the Honorable Chagurani, I think 80% are youth. But how are we treating them? So I think they have come forward, they are active, and they want to determine who should govern them. But is the context allowing them? There has been an argument that these young people are violent. Because what are their responsibilities? People should participate in go about their civic and political duties in a peaceful manner. But who starts violence? And good enough with technology, the government cannot control the narrative. We see as it happens. Look at Elegu. You broke a candidate moving to an official campaign venue. Stage a roadblock. You wait until time for campaign is over. You open for him. Disruption of campaigns. And we have a laid-back electoral commission. They will tell you, security, maybe they had information we don't have, you know, all that tired narrative. They will tell you that the same. Look at Guru, a candidate moving on a highway, going to a campaign venue, block them, beat them. Some of them are injured, in hospital, and we carry on as business as usual. I wish the media could profile these state-funded organs that are disrupting our democracy. And when we profile, I have seen some attempts of profiling. When you profile these oppressors in state institutions, then the government comes up and says, this is tribalism. But facts are facts. Yeah. Who is involved in violating the rights of Ugandans? Who is involved in disrupting our democracy? If we find that they come from the same region, then you cannot blame media for tribalism. You will blame the people, allowing them to vulgarize our state institutions. And they should be profiled, they should be held to account, they should be asked to leave the army, because their character contradicts the character of the army in the national constitution. Non-political, non-partisan, respectful, and you are busy beating citizens going about their political duties. You are not fit to put on a citizen's uniform. So the responsibility of citizens, and including youth, is to go about their rights and duties in a peaceful manner while respecting the rights of others. But when you bring in state-funded hooligans to disrupt, beat up youth, no accountability, then we have no responsibilities even to talk about. Because responsibility starts with duty bearers. They are supposed to lead by example, be law enforcers, not law breakers, keep law and order, but they are busy disrupting law and order in this country.
Okay. All right. 30 seconds to emphasize. Sarah, in 1980, as a young person, absolutely driven, absolutely motivated, absolutely informed for my age. But I genuinely don't know, Priscilla, that if what was happening today was happening around me, I don't know other spaces, but happened around me between Jinja, bits of Kampala and Toro and Nagongera, I don't know whether or not I would necessarily participate. And I'm saying I saw it apart from the security details of the presidential candidates, the party leaders who came to Mwiri in arms. Between there and Toro and Nagongera up to the voting day, I did not see even a police officer. And on
that note, Joseph, you earlier did make mention of the Amin regime. What are some of those aspects that you see are recurring now that could easily slip us back into the Amin regime?
It's not back. Many of the situations that I have seen today are not what I saw in Amin's regime. In any case, Amin's was a dictatorship. Amin overthrew my government and banned political parties. So we knew that, and we fought Idi Amin up to his end. So clearly, if you went to a roadblock and you found the police and the army, you know it's a military regime. Beyond targeting political opponents and beyond targeting communities, part of what Sarah said, we all know that. But if you put Amin's regime and you list it, and you list what we've seen under this administration in the last 2 election cycles alone, they don't compare. And it's very difficult saying that on NTV today.
All right, so as the 2 candidates, in a minute each as we are going into a break, you have seen the scenes that are unfolding to the different stakeholders that are in the same races as you are participating in. What do these pictures, what message do these pictures send to you in your continued endeavors of democracy? I'll start with you, Gloria.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, before I even answer the question, I just wanted to supplement on civic education, especially in the youth politics. It is sad that some people don't even know that we have youth MPs, and they don't even know how they are voted. They don't even know the youth structures. Every time I introduce myself as someone who is aspiring to represent the youth in parliament, they're like, who votes for you? You know, where are you voted from? Are you Kampala Central here? And they don't even know that we have a central region, a whole central region that is represented. So anyway, back to your question. It is still sad that these pictures bring a very bad image of intimidation, especially to us as young people. And I can tell you there are so many young people who are not going to participate in this election just because of those pictures, because they're afraid of their lives, they're afraid of their families, they're afraid of their, their property. So these pictures are actually leading us to a very compromised situation, because just like we all know, young people make the biggest percentage in this country, and if we don't participate, I don't believe there will be, real democracy.
Okay.
So,
Kent.
In my view, it's unfortunate. I believe the state, based on what I've been seeing, one-on-one, I believe the state is playing defensive, and it's unfortunate that at a point in time where the voices matter, and actually the citizens should be given an opportunity to choose what they want, instead the opposite is happening. So it's unfortunate, because if this actually is left the way it is, it's scary. In my view, it's like it's leading us back to the days of Idi Amin. Some of us just heard about the war Idi Amin had with, you know, Uganda, but looks like where we are tending to, that is where we actually, that's like what is before us. More like the state speaks louder than the people are speaking in terms of making a statement of what exactly it is. It's like it's either going to be by force, because if you notice, opposition campaigns are totally different with ruling party campaigns. Ruling party campaigns are not disrupted. If anything, the environment is so conducive for them. But it's unfortunate that when the young generation comes up and they choose who they want to support, instead the opposite happens, and we witness all this. So as a contestant, it's unfortunate that actually I feel bad that my children are witnessing a Uganda where such elections are happening. You know, what have we put forward for them to see?
All right, and that young child of Kent in 18 years will be thinking, no, it was not worth it. I saw how my mother had to go through it. It's not something I would want to. And that cuts a number on the people that should be ideally driving this country to the democracy and the future and the Uganda we so speak of that we want to see. So at the end of the day, we've been left with more questions than answers over observation of elections with a youth of focus. When we turn to the non-partisanship principles that ideally should be guiding and should be navigated through this electoral cycle right after this break. We continue on with our conversation here on Morning at NTV, looking to the observation of elections with the youth focus, which we've done a good job giving ample time to dissect it, but it has left us with more questions than answers. And I think one of the things that has come out is that at the end of the day, perhaps the intent of the state is to ensure that there's less numbers and less young people that come out on the 15th of January 2025 to exercise their duty, to be part of the change that they want to see. Now we change gears, navigating principles of non-partisan elections. But I will start with my two candidates on the table. Why did you come as independents? Gloria, why did you come as an independent?
Okay, thank you so much. I believe that young people deserve an independent voice. I believe that young people deserve someone who is not going to be compromised by any, ideologies of a political party or what. And actually, to inform you, when I decided to come up in this race, I consulted some people, and they were telling me, you're coming as what? Those elections, it's only NRM that goes through. With youth politics, even opposition doesn't stand, you get. So I was scared from the start, but because I've been fueled by the passion to serve young people, I've been fueled by the passion to create the change that I want to see as a young person, I decided to come, regardless of the intimidation, regardless of, the myths they are creating out there, that it's hard for opposition to go through and represent the youth. It is hard for independents to go through to represent the youth. I am here to serve young people. I'm here to solve their problems and challenges, starting from unemployment, benefiting from the government initiatives that we have, the PDM, EMIOGA, having a strong voice in governance and decision making. And I believe that if young people really want to see that change, they should vote this time around someone who is independent and is not compromised by any party.
All right, but someone who's independent, when you go to parliament, you'll be disadvantaged with the numbers. So if you say you want to serve the people, then what are the underlying factors that caused you not to be part of any political party?
I can tell you that even our vice president is independent. And she's serving her people. she's serving. We have so many independent parliament.
Meaning something.
Yes, we have so many.
Translated as she is. Okay.
But she's still independent. And we also have people in parliament who are independents and who stand on their ground, who are not compromised. And I can tell you, if someone
but what made you go like, the parties will not do it for me?
I did not see any party that really has ideologies that I stand for.
Okay, all right. Kent.
Thank you. I'm not independent. I am the need flag bearer. Though it is interesting that if a party has not yet been on the market for quite long, especially if there is a party, and I'm opposition, so if there is a party that is opposition, that is spearheading with numbers, many a times even these other parties, you literally appear independent even when you're not independent. However, I would say that just to add on what you are saying, it's interesting that she could, you're saying the vice president is independent. There are so many independent candidates we have today that are not independent. The reason they are independent is because they did not get flags. You know, they contested in the primaries and they were not successful, so they decided to come in as independent. So you realize that there are many factors that have forced people to come independent. There are those that have genuinely decided, I will not join any party, I'll come in as an independent from the word go. There are those that have mixed feelings. They are only independents because they did not get the flags that is there to get. However, me as Evelyn, much as I'm a flag bearer, one of the things that I really actually believe is right now we are into campaigns and parties are just like a ticket into what I'm desiring, you know, and perhaps it has an added advantage vis-a-vis being an independent because like I said, 2020 I campaigned and I was independent. I was actually independent because at that time I looked at the ruling party, and then I looked at the opposition party that seemed to have the highest numbers and has the, let me say, the biggest chance. The only reason I would join it then was because it was an open door to getting into parliament. But ideally, when it comes to what exactly does the party stand for, to be honest, by then I was not really seeing weight in it as and then. And I perceive that is one of the things that I was talking about, our narratives, where people join numbers because they know it's the doorway into parliament, not necessarily because of what they are going to do there. However, back to that point, regardless of the party that I am in, I believe once elected into power, I'm going to be in position to serve those that voted me, those that did not vote me, and those that did not vote at all. So I believe that a good leader should actually be one who is non-partisan, meaning you're not biased by any party. You're not biased because you belong to this particular party. You actually carry the people's interests as first priority, because that's exactly what took you into parliament, to put people's interests as first and to serve them.
Joseph, as an analyst, perhaps we should dissolve the 2005 referendum that opened up the floor for other political players to come in and participate in the democracy and governance of our country.
The guys who are ruling this country are absolutely delighted, and they'll be delighted to hear from you, and they'll be delighted to hear me say yes. But unfortunately for them, I am both an analyst, but also one who's substantially conflicted in political terms. And even from my analytical perspective, I want to emphasize that people should vote for Gloria. I wish you very well. I have a very personal relationship with her, including, the more you know her, including the things that she represents in terms of her own values and experiences. And I wish she was able to be expressed slightly more beyond the space. But that said, no, part of the challenge facing this country is that when political parties were banned, politics went from the politics of convictions of issues and values to politics of me, myself, and I. Individual merit politics has killed this country, and part with that is now the material-led politics of money, not issues. I was driven very early on by an ideological conviction. the future of this country and the future of this continent, in fact, the future of the globe lies around political values and ideology. The sooner young people in Uganda pick on something to latch on, the better. And it cannot really be done on the basis of quote political independence. In fact, the death of political parties and the death of political institutions, in fact, the death of institutions in this country, where polity has now been reconfined to an individual, in some cases, possibly families or certain kind of communities, the more the young people of this country suffer. Gloria, political independence from a leadership perspective really should be about whether or not a governing political party, a president who has been elected as head of a household, is one that takes the family and home as a whole. When my party governed, we governed across the country for everybody. When my party governed, you govern for the citizens, regardless of political affiliations. In fact, one of the luckiest things Mr. Museveni has is that we have a population that is not sufficiently informed. This business of insulting citizens and saying you voted badly, and that's now the policy that the Gloria speak, because unfortunately for them, that is their more recent experiences, that, oh, if we don't vote for him, we are not going to get it. I tell the people of Nagongara, they voted Nyong and NRM for the last 40 years. Our roads and systems and institutions and structures are completely dead, meaning the more you give them blank checks, the more they disregard you.
Okay.
I think young people need to begin to focus on the bigger, I don't want to teach ideology here, but if it's about jobs, if it's about education, if it's about health, if it's about infrastructure, if it's about the environment, if it's about the future, these are ideological linking things that links you then, including the question of taxation. So when I'm throwing the question of national debt, I was being deliberate. That is where parties should be able to latch. And that's where you young people should be able to look at political leaders and individuals and political parties that latch and near to that and give you not only hope from your own perspective, but hope in terms of your children and hope about the future of this country and this continent. It is actually possible to find political parties, but I know at the moment it's failed, and particularly the fact that mine is not on the platform. It's not surprising that people are confused. As
political parties are meant to be drivers of good governance and democracy, they are finding the roadblocks that you alluded to earlier on. And it begs the question, what are the principles of non-partisan democracy that are structurally undermined in the context of Uganda?
Well, in our case, of course, parties are the front line of driving governance, of driving participation and representation, but together with other agencies, they are not alone. So when it comes to the principles of impartiality and neutrality, that's what is required of public officials, not of parties.
Yes.
So you would expect neutrality and impartiality from Electoral Commission, from police, from the army, and from all public servants. Our constitution is very clear on this, but also the Political Parties and Organizations Act under Section 16. It's very clear that any person who works for a fully controlled government agency is not supposed to be anywhere in public partisan conduct. The law further prescribes a punishment of 1 year imprisonment without an option of a fine of public officials who engage in partisan politics. If you go to the gist of the Amama Mbaba's petition in 2016, this matter was discussed and deliberated on by a panel of 11 Supreme Court judges. And part of the recommendations they gave was that this provision of the Political Parties and Organizations Act is not strong enough, is not prohibitive. So one of the recommendations was that among the electoral reforms and the directives they gave the Attorney General to implement, there should be a punishment of public officials who engage in partisan politics. This is one of the recommendations that was never implemented. And maybe we need to ask the professors to go back to Supreme Court with the application of contempt, because the Attorney General is in contempt of this directive by Supreme Court, and all public officials vulgarizing our elections are in contempt of this particular ruling of the Supreme Court. So when you look at the landscape now in politics, I don't know whether Ugandans would 100% believe that we have a neutral arbiter in the Electoral Commission, in the judiciary, which is also a key component of dispute resolution, in the police, in the army. I think the verdict is out there with Ugandans. I don't need to re-emphasize it. The trust levels are on their lowest. If you have, you know, we have a recent judgment from court on the missing Kenyan human rights defenders, where the judge said that these human rights defenders had kidnapped themselves, only for the president to come and tell the whole world that he had them in his fridge. So when you look at this, so is this a judiciary that gives confidence to Ugandans that they are a neutral arbiter in our governance? When you go to Electoral Commission, only the last statement on Guru is the statement I would consider good in terms of electoral violence and disruption of electoral processes. But it feels, it is short of calling out to the army and the impunity of the army. The army holding sticks in broad daylight, beating up people, brutalizing people. The commander-in-chief is on a campaign trail. Majority of them are partisan, openly campaigning, openly threatening people. Those guys who are partisan, who think they should be part of protecting the gains under President Museveni, you are not fit to wear that uniform. And the other you put it off, the better for you.
Therefore, as we're closing this conversation, it begs the one single question I'll pose to all of you as you submit your final rounds. What single change, be it legal, be it institutional or cultural, would actually strengthen the outcomes of 2026 and deliver a genuine non-partisan election this time round? I'll start with you, Sarah.
The Electoral Commission needs to demonstrate that they are in charge of the electoral process and they are up to the game described in our Constitution. Their mandate is very clear. They must take charge and direct the electoral process. The police comes in electoral process under the supervision of Electoral Commission. It's not the other way around. And when you read, I know there is this misunderstanding, deliberate, that the police has invited the army to participate in elections. Article 209 is very clear on the functions of the army. The army is only enjoined to participate with other civilian agencies in situations of disaster and emergency. The Constitution is very clear. So this excuse of police that we have invited the army, even when the army moves as an advance team, it is null and void constitutionally, and they should stop hiding behind it.
All right, Gloria as a candidate.
Yes, thank you so much. I would really love to see human rights being protected. I would really love to see the army stop beating young people when they are on, rallies. I would really love to see that there is no commercialization of politics for young people. I would really love it if the ruling party, the NRM, does not, make it that as if you're not part of it, you are against it. We are all Ugandans, and we have our constitutional right to vote and to support anyone who would wish to. So to me, I would really feel like human rights protection is really, really important in this election.
All right, candidate Kent.
I would love it if Ugandans woke up one day and put an end to all this and said enough is enough. If we either put an end to we either stop the campaigns until the campaigns actually run the way they are supposed to run, because it's only during campaigns that we can choose what the people want, because at the end of the day, when it's campaign time, we are all the same. The president is equally campaigning for that seat. So at the moment, he's an incumbent, yes, but he's under testing as we speak, and we are doing exams. And it's the people to choose who they want to lead them. So for as long as we sit back and allow it to flow, it is a different story. So in my view, one of the things I would really, really want to see is people's voices respected, and people coming out boldly and saying, until our voices are willing to be respected, we can put a hold to the campaign issue.
All right, Joseph.
Political party leaders across the board, including those that are not participating, like mine, Uganda People's Congress, must be exemplary, and the message should be very clear that we should respect electoral laws and should work in conformity with the Electoral Commission. But that said, I was delighted that Minister Otafire issued a statement the other day on the question of the police. Not only must the army withdraw to the barracks, as Sarah says, but the police must stop beating and brutalizing our people. That is a policing matter. The Inspector General of Police must be called to account, but the minister responsible is the leader officer. That said, the army must withdraw to the barracks. The army minister, Jacob Oboth, is a fantastic brother and a personal friend of mine. Jacob should come out clearly and take a position and say the army has got no business in the electoral process.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your submissions, and thank you to our audience for engaging in this conversation. I know that you were sharing with us your 2 cents on our social media platforms, but the conversations are not yet over until your decision on the 15th of January 2026 is over. So as the country, we're heading towards the 2026 general elections, and one thing is clear: safeguarding the vote is a shared responsibility. Responsibility of our institutions, responsibilities of our candidates, responsibilities of our election observers, and mostly responsibilities of our youth, who are now the largest stakeholder. Non-partisan politics is politics at the end of the day, and it should be a leveled ground acceptable for every single person. If we are going to be building the trust, if these young people here who said they no longer trust in the system, they are not happy with what they have seen before them, and so they want to be the change agents, but how will they be the change agents if the environment does not allow them to comfortably be the change agents that they see themselves to be? Perhaps they are the Uganda that we deserve. I am Priscilla Regina Naluoga, and that brings us to the end of this conversation. Until we meet again, please be reminded that it is your responsibility to have as much civic education on your fingertips